So, anyways, well, let's bring in Jim a little early here. We had him scheduled for 10 after, but let's bring him in at 8 after with us because we're going to talk NFL. Hey, Jimbo, obviously we're going to talk NFL on kickoff night tonight, Texans Chiefs. But you just heard my whole preamble here to hour 2 on Ambrosie and the CFL season cancellation. How does it look to you?
Well, the time to talk a lot is not when you're rolling and everything's great. It's when there's problems, especially in the bigger markets in the country. So if you look at what other leagues did, the NHL did, they really worked hard to stay relevant and in the news with talk about coaches and signings and things. So they were in the news cycle and they weren't pushed away. The longer you're silent, look at the U.S. Open, Serena Williams, Kyle Lowry and the Raptors, the NFL kicking off, the NCAA is back. The NHL's down to the Final Four. I mean, and on it goes. And then you have baseball. So the CFL is pushed so far off the radar. Randy Ambrosie's number one job right now, and the people that work around him, is trying to keep it in the news and relevant. Every podcast, every column, calling up reporters. Hey, do you know that in this day in 1994 that the Blue Bombers and Riders did this, and that? Like, somehow find a way to stay relevant and in the news. Because when you're out, and it's hard to get back in and get back up the pecking order, especially with media getting crushed so much because of shrinking budgets because of COVID, Rod. I mean, there's probably no more time than now is to get yourself out there and talk every day till people are sick of you, but to keep your name and your league in the news.
Yes, they're in a competitive space for people's attention. Sports fans is what you've just said, and they've just folded. And it's disappointing. John in Kansas City is watching. John Schmeiser, he says, whenever the focus of conversation is on the commissioner and not the games or players, it's a loss for the league. So, speaking of Kansas City, they're kicking off there tonight, 6:20 p.m. Mountain. Chiefs and the Houston Texans tonight, Jimbo. No NFL preseason games. So what do you expect tonight in the first game we'll see in the 4-down league?
It's the unexpected. There's going to be mistakes that don't usually happen because of, first of all, you have to go back, not even no preseason, but most of the offseason activities were wiped out. And then when they got to camp, they were really strict on what they were allowed and not allowed to do. So basically, in a lot of ways, I mean, they're, I guess, in physical shape, but they're rolling the helmets out there and saying, let's play, boys. And there's going to be blown coverages and missed assignments. The officiating is going to look different. Just so your listeners know, all the officials will have a mask the whole game, and they're using an electronic whistle. So Fox 40, Ron Foxcroft's company, who came up with the whistle that's used in the NFL and NHL and NBA around sports around the world, has come up with a battery-powered electronic whistle. So that's what the officials will use. And they're going to have masks all game. And it'll be weird because Arrowhead Stadium seats 75,000. It's considered one of, if not the loudest outdoor stadium in North America. They're only allowing 16,000 fans there. So if you're the Houston Texans, you're like, this is great. I can actually hear the snap count because it's not 110 decibels. So that's going to be tonight and the rest of the year, teams with limited fans or no fans. So the whole concept of home field advantage will be turned upside down. But these first few weeks, it's going to be exciting because there's no way to predict how the game and how the play is going to be. There might be a fumble, scoop and score, strip sacks, missed assignments, a DB out of position, turns an 80-yard touchdown. And there could be some big scores and a lot of people betting the over. And it'll be fun because we don't know what to expect. There's no film to go on or no highlights to go on through the offseason and summer. We're like, okay, well, let's just play football tonight. Let's go.
Well, pretty hard to predict for odds makers. They got the Chiefs favored by 9, by the way. And I don't think any of the way that AFC divisional playoff game ended last year or how it went will play into Houston's mindset tonight, but they blew a 24-0 lead and allowed a 50-burger to the Chiefs, the eventual Super Bowl champions. That'll be distant memory tonight, but it would be hard to set a line, I would think.
I agree, Rod. I mean, when it comes to the setting of the betting lines, to me, it's a little bit of voodoo. I don't know how they come up with a number. I mean, it does hurt the Texans that DeAndre Hopkins is now a member of the Cardinals and signed a long-term contract. I mean, that's a heck of a safety blanket for any quarterback. And when in trouble, you can throw it high and deep, and he's going to get it. And I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes and the offensive weapons he has to work with. The team is pretty much the same that won the Super Bowl, save for a couple players. Their secondary could be better. They lost a little bit on the offensive line, but basically the team that won it all is the team that we will see tonight. And you got Patrick Mahomes at the peak of his powers. So for the National Football League, as far as the face of the league with his contract and who he is, I mean, the last 2 years, Patrick Mahomes has been the league MVP, and then he led his team to a Super Bowl, the first one in 50 years. So he's off to a pretty good start of his career. And he's one of the reasons that I think a lot of NFL fans and football fans are excited, because he's worth the price of admission. He's the kind of player that you tune into games, that even sideline fans and peripheral fans who don't really even love the NFL will watch him because of who he is and the way he plays.
Bingo, the star power. Our director of scouting, Craig Smith's watching. He says, Jim, what game or games are you most looking forward to in week one?
Well, it's Tampa Bay, New Orleans. I mean, the week one, because they're in the NFC South, one of those teams will win and possibly have the hammer for the first round seed in the NFC playoffs. Both teams are so good. You know, Tom Brady and all those weapons, and Drew Brees and Sean Payton still have an outstanding team and a better defensive line, I think people give credit for. That's going to be an interesting game. I think New England, Miami, because of Cam Newton, the new marriage with Bill Belichick, and both sides are really talking about how much they're enjoying working with each other. A lot of people didn't understand the marriage, but so far, everything they're saying and the vibe you're getting on New England and camp is like, yeah, this is going to be good. And this is Bill Belichick. And don't for a second think that Bill Belichick does not want to prove to the league and to Tom Brady and everyone else that he can bring a guy like Cam Newton in and win big, because he's Bill Belichick. And he would never say it, but he has an ego. And, there's a reason he's still coaching after all his successes, because he wants to establish a legacy that's going to be so unassailable that no other coach will be able to match it.
Buccaneers Patriots going to be must-see TV all year long. And great question, Smitty. My burning question is this. What is going on in Jacksonville that Jalen Ramsey wanted out, Leonard Fournette wanted out? There's a litany of guys that wanted out, and all basically got traded or outright released. I'll just flip this for a second and say this. I read a story this morning with Doug Marrone saying they expect a surprise this year, and they're saying Ramsey's a me-first guy, Fournette was a me-first guy. They kind of flipped the table, sort of an A-B Steelers situation, right? Addition by subtraction. But something seems rotten with the Jaguars, Jim.
I'll never forget, Rod, being at Bill's training camp when Doug Marrone, his first year at camp, and like 2 days into camp, and a lot of the veteran Bills reporters who've been around since the Jim Kelly era, and the amount of disrespect which he treated them. And I'm not saying because they're reporters, you have to go out of your way, but basically he had no time for anyone. He acted like he was smarter than everybody, that he knew more than that. And I know maybe when you coach at Rutgers, you can get away with that. But when you're coaching men in the National Football League, they're like, I'm not putting up with that. And you look at some of the good teams and the different teams. Yeah, the coaches can be tough. Pete Carroll can be a tough guy to play for and a demanding disciplinarian, but he wouldn't treat players and people the way Doug Marrone does. And I think the Doug Marrone factor plays a big part in that because of just who he is and how he interacts. That's just who he is. He was like that at Rutgers. He was like that with the Bills. Definitely, he wore out his welcome, and no one was sad to see him leave Western New York, not a single person. And he's doing the same thing in Jacksonville. And being a coach is also being a salesperson. It's not just X's and O's. You are selling your vision on the team and how you're going to execute and how they're going to play as a team. That's what Mike McCarthy's doing with Dallas, the new head coach there. He is selling everyone that this is how we're going to play football in Dallas, how the Cowboys are going to win, and how we're going to make it to the Super Bowl. That's what you do, but I don't see anyone buying what Doug Marrone's selling. Like Gardner Minshew's not going to say anything because where else is he going to be a starting quarterback?
I know. It just doesn't make sense. And I just said to Clark, let's get John Chick on here because he's played for the Jags. He lives in Jacksonville, and John will give us the story. Brady Witt in Saskatoon's watching, and he's asked every day, and we haven't answered his question. So I'm going to put it to you. What do you expect from the Seahawks? Expectations are high in the Emerald City this year.
They're very high. Interesting division because now Kyler Murray has DeAndre Hopkins to work with in Arizona. And that's a sneaky. I think if two teams sort of flying under the radar that people aren't talking enough about, they're going to scare some good teams in the league. I think Arizona is one of them because of getting DeAndre Hopkins. And I definitely think getting Jadeveon Clowney in Tennessee, the Titans they're going to kick some people's butts out there. I mean, they can run the ball, we know that, but now they got a legit scary pass rusher. So Seattle's in a tough division. I mean, they're a good team, but they're in a tough division. I wish Green Bay would have drafted a wide receiver. It makes no sense to me why they didn't, because they should be better. But Minnesota will be pretty tough. Dallas is going to be very good. That was brilliant getting CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. That's a great addition to their weapons. We already know about New Orleans and Tampa Bay. So there's a lot of really good teams in the NFC, and that's what makes it tough for Seattle. And I like Seattle, and I think the Seahawks are going to be very good. But boy, oh boy, is it ever tough when you start looking at their path to get out of the NFC to the Super Bowl. It's not easy at all. Everything's got to be perfect. They got to stay healthy because there's not a lot of margin for error in the NFC this year because there's a lot of good teams.
Yeah, well, defending conference champions 49ers reside in that division. Arizona, they're saying, yeah, going to be great. And your buddy Jesse Palmer, I think it was Palmer I saw this morning on SportsCenter, predicting Kyler Murray will be the most outstanding player, the MVP of the NFL this year. I think it was Jesse Palmer, but I watched so much coverage today, I can't remember who said it. Last one, Jim. Your Raiders, I think it's a shame that they're not going to have people in that beautiful new facility there. But I've been in Vegas, and they are geeked up for the Raiders, man. They were geeked up before they even came to town. Do they have something to be excited about?
They got a few things. Yeah, there's some stuff. I mean, any team where you have John Gruden as the coach, he makes headlines. It's part of the division. You're playing in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs. That's two very tough games there. Now, it does help the Raiders that Von Miller suffered that injury in Denver, and that's a huge loss to the Broncos. And they say there's a chance he might be back, but if that's back, that's after U.S. Thanksgiving. So now we're looking at December. So September, October, and pretty much most of November, there's no Von Miller for the Broncos. So that's tough for them. How will the LA Chargers be this year? I don't know, but Bosa's an outstanding player. So the Raiders, they're in a pretty tough division as well. So that's part of they're still growing. I think they're still like 2 years away from being in that upper echelon. I'd like to see them keep going, being in the new city, new stadium. If there were fans there, that would help because of the black hole, but it's a good start. And I mean, when there's going to be allowed to have fans in stadiums, I don't know. It'll be weird to see games in a dome like New Orleans without fans or Lambeau Field without fans, but because of the new reality we live in, that's what they have to adapt to. The NBA and the NHL, and usually they've done it. So the NFL will have to look at these other leagues and say, well, they did it, and their teams are winning and moving one step closer to winning their respective championships, so we have no excuses. You know, Bill Belichick, a coach like that, will not accept any excuse from any player about fans or no fans or anything, and a lot of the coaches are going to just say, hey, concentrate on the game there. But it would be a big help for the Raiders in Vegas that first year of that incredible stadium with fans there. That's the one thing that's kind of different. It's almost like wrestling when they had the TV studio wrestling without fans. That's what it's going to feel like for the Raiders this year.
It was a little hollow. And hey, in 60 seconds or less, because here comes all the flood of questions from Marquino. He says, how do you think Joey B is going to do this season? He's talking about Joe Burrows. He goes, go Bengals. How do you think the number one overall pick is going to do?
He's a fantastic player and a great athlete, but if there ever was a player that could have used two preseason games, it's Joe Burrow. I mean, that's what hurts a young player not having a preseason game, even one preseason game. Say he plays a half, and then he's got a half of actual NFL action against another team. That makes a big difference. Now, I think he's going to be fabulous, and he's going to put up good numbers, but there's going to be some mistakes made because of his lack of preseason and the lack of the offseason activities because of COVID. That hurts him. The older veteran quarterbacks, they're going to shrug their shoulders and go, like, what are you going to tell Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, all those kind of quarterbacks, Drew Brees? I don't need to be taught anything. I know how to run the offense. I know probably more than the coaches. I'm good, but a guy like Joe Burrow could have used that preseason. But I'm very much excited to see him at the NFL stage. And I think the Bengals, that's the kind of guy you build around for the next 10 years. And they're hoping he's potentially their Patrick Mahomes in Cincinnati, their franchise player. And if you're going to build it around a player, that's a good one to start. I can't wait to see him in action.
Great stuff. Jim, always fun chatting NFL with you. Enjoy the games. I appreciate the time. You're looking great, my friend. It looks like you didn't pack on the COVID-15, I see. It's been very healthy for you.
No, as a matter of fact, our youngest daughter, she's in grade 12, and she's a former gymnast. And we got in this habit because I do morning radio. I come home at lunchtime, and we'd work out together about a half hour, and just trying to keep up with her. It's been kicking my butt, so I ended up losing a few pounds. So I got in that habit of doing that because, at my age, once you gain that extra 15, Rod, it's tough to get rid of.
It's tough to get rid of, exactly. All right, Jim, thank you. Enjoy the game tonight.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.